Good afternoon again, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you're all enjoying yourselves and making the most of the opportunities to connect and to network. Now we've got a few more extra sessions for you today before we conclude day one here at the Expand North Star stage. We've got an action-packed few more days to go as well, so please do stick around and we'll give you some more details about what's coming up over the next few days. My name's Amandeep. I will be with you and trying to keep the energy levels up. Maybe we'll invite the Brazilian capoeira team back to help us, stay enthusiastic. So thank you so much for staying with us. Now we've got a very special session looking at the case for emerging market investing. A gentleman who's flown in especially from the States for his first appearance here at GITEX. We hope the first and many more. Seena Amidi, managing partner of Plug and Play from the US, and this session's going to be moderated expertly by Mike Butcher, who's editor at large at TechCrunch UK from my original home city of London. So please give our international guests a very UAE warm welcome. Thank you.
Hello. Hi, everybody. Thanks very much for joining us. Apparently, we're a little bit early compared to the agenda, but we'll have some fun anyway. It's my pleasure to introduce Seena Amidi, who's managing partner of Plug and Play, which is an accelerator, incubator. What would you describe it these days?
I would describe it as three parts. We have three different customers. One customer is our startups. And of course, we invest in startups and enable them to succeed. Another part is we help corporations work with startups and ease the relationship as much as we can. That allows us to help the startups more, which is our initial customer. And our newest customer is governments. By helping connect corporations and startups, we're also able to help economic growth in different countries. Making governments our last and one of our most important customers.
So that seems like a new development. Do you have any Plug and Play centers in the Middle East?
We do. We have a center in Abu Dhabi, close by, of course, and we're invited here by them. We have a center in Riyadh. We have a center in Egypt, in Turkey, and in Morocco.
Okay, so pretty well distributed then. We're talking a little bit about the case for emerging market investing. Obviously Plug and Play is quite well known in Silicon Valley. In Germany, it was quite an early player. I think less so in the UK. I don't think you've got a UK centre, have you?
We just started.
You just started. That's breaking news then. Okay, fair enough. I'm slightly out of date, but emerging markets, I mean, for obvious reasons, your father was originally Iranian, I believe, and this is a family business. And your father was famously an investor in PayPal, which started in the garage, your father's garage, or he was an investor, certainly an early investor. So you've certainly got a long history. The company is a long association with innovation in Silicon Valley. But when it comes to coming out of something like a sophisticated ecosystem like Silicon Valley, which has been going for 50 years plus since the end of the Second World War, and in fact, during the Second World War with Robert Oppenheimer and others, investing in and looking at emerging markets like the Middle East, it's a whole different ballgame, wouldn't you say?
So, when we started our office in California, we would look at every startup and we would see how many of the founders are immigrants. And it was around 70%. Now, we believe that everyone needs to move to California to be successful. That is outdated and not true. We are now seeing that having different cultures in every startup is what makes a startup have a higher chance of becoming successful. Now, in emerging markets, the founders have had to go through more challenges, and having a startup is a challenge. It's something that I don't think I could do. I think every founder is more courageous than I am. It takes a whole lot of work, And having to be forced into starting a company, forced into taking this really challenging path, makes emerging markets more interesting to invest in than somewhere like California or the UK that sometimes has an easier path to success.
But would you say that markets like Amina are ready for plug and play, which is really more like an incubator model, isn't it? Wouldn't it be better if you were more like plain VCs?
So right now when it comes to VCs, the hardest part of investing is to get access into a startup. Every person that you bring into your startup needs to fill a gap that you don't have on your founding team. And you can't have all the gaps filled with your founding team. One gap that you need to fill is marketing, hiring, legal, business development. What Plug and Play does and what Plug and Play believes is the most important thing is business development. So what we try to do for the startups we work with is to help them with business development. So we have 56 offices around the world. Being in an emerging market isn't a negative if you can connect to the markets that increase your valuation, increase your business development chance. And what we try to do is we try to come in and make that path a little bit easier. Because a quick flight to London would increase your valuation from here to London. So why not fly all the way to California?
So, so are you saying that plug and play is effectively a feeder mechanism for Silicon Valley?
It's not a feeding mechanism from Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley has some good funding, but unfortunately it is not a place that you can afford to build a company. Right now it's not even feasible with the prices in the valley.
It's too expensive.
I mean, it's very expensive and it doesn't have the draw it used to have, in my opinion.
Why would you say that is? Why would you say that's the case?
Right now, California has been going through a little bit of hardship. I don't know if you've seen it on Instagram or with the governments, but we aren't doing the best. The minimum salary in California is $75,000 a year. For any starting salary, that means if you're a manager at McDonald's.
In tech or
no,
anything?
The minimum salary.
Right.
With the legal minimum salary. So it's very challenging. So being able to create the bridge and visiting California for funding is enough of a connection to the valley. There are other great VCs around the world, but it does help to have a concentration that is still there currently.
So you've had a presence in MENA for a while, given the offices that you've got. I don't know what the beep is there, by the way. Somebody switch off the beep, if there is a beep. What's been your experience of operating in the Middle East to date?
The Middle East is quite fast-paced. It is somewhere that you have to be willing to change and adapt daily, as we learned today. It is filled with opportunities. It is interesting. We have to get past some of the understandings other cultures have with the Middle East. We have to get past the idea that the Middle East is full of money and undereducated money, because I think the money here is quite educated, and for sure in Abu Dhabi and Dubai it is more educated than most places in the world. So what we have to do when we come here is we have to be willing to adapt, be willing to get rid of the ideals that we had prior to coming, and to see it for what it is. And this is a great opportunity and one of the fastest moving markets in the world.
So the latest news from you guys is that you're looking to raise $100 million to invest in Saudi technology companies. Or are you investing out of Saudi into other Middle Eastern countries, or are you investing inside Saudi itself?
So we're looking to invest in all countries that we're active in. We believe that when we open an office, we want to invest in the startups we help and to take part in them. A difference between us and other accelerators is we don't charge or we don't require startups to give up a percentage of their companies to join, which means it is not required, it is not So we have to buy that percentage to take part in their success. That is because we do work for corporations and governments, not just for startups. So it is a competitive advantage for us to be able to take that into account. In Saudi, it is very important to invest in Saudi, and we are trying to raise $100 million to invest. We have also raised $160 million to invest in other funds all across the world. And we are very interested in raising money here, and we have a few talks to do it in the region, in this country as well.
So does that mean you're looking for LPs to invest in your fund, or are you looking to be an LP in other funds?
I would say it's a little bit more complicated than that. We have funds for supply chain with Walmart, where we're looking to invest in very particular solutions for the supply chain problem the world is facing. We have raised a sustainability fund in order to help speed up sustainability in the world. We have raised a fintech fund with insurance companies from Japan, from Germany, from the US. And we have raised an A round and beyond fund of $100 million in order to invest in the startups that we help in early stages. But what we do for funding is usually for later stage. As an early investor, we invest $20 to $30 million a year in 200 startups in the seed and pre-seed stage. We like to buy 1% of the company up to 5% of the company, and we do that as one LP from the family. So we like to put our money where our mouth is and put our bets into the companies that we help.
Well, that sounds like quite a broad strategy. In the Middle East, I was reading that startups in the Middle East and North Africa raised $101 million in the last few months, year on year. But there was actually a bit of a decline over last year. But there's been a kind of a decline in funding since last year was kind of a big year. But so amongst the sectors that bagged most of the capital, about $36 million, was logistics. Logistics, then travel tech, then health tech, then Web3. Do you think those kinds of sectors seem to be doing really well? Do you think it's because infrastructure is still an issue in this region?
I think the world has seen the opportunities in this region. And health tech is moving in. All health companies are moving in. Logistics is a global problem. It's not right how the prices shot up. It's not right that containers have a 2-year shelf life where they sit not used and we have a problem buying them. When it comes to food, the Middle East is in a food desert. It is not somewhere where people like Tyson have put a lot of investments, but they have all started looking at the region as a potential place to grow. So I think every market has a chance to grow here. I am shocked that fintech isn't on there because in the last few years, fintech was 70% of the funding, if not more.
Yeah, it actually went slightly down, perhaps because I guess there was just so much activity in the last few years that it sort of maybe flatlined a bit. But and I think maybe just maybe a reflection of the wider economic circumstances we find ourselves in, rising interest rates, etc. What are the kinds of things that interest you? You're actually based out of Barcelona. You've traveled around Europe and the Middle East yourself. You've got ties here and ties in the Valley. What are the kinds of things that impress you when you meet founders, particularly from this region?
So, a founder is someone, in my opinion, who's very brave and a little bit crazy. It is, at least a 4-year commitment, if not 7, before they can see a salary. And a founder that takes a salary is usually looked a little bit down on by investors. So they have to be someone who's willing to put in a lot of work. They need to look at the world as an entire world and not someone that's just going after the region. It's not enough to say, I'm going to be the biggest startup in Dubai. They need to be thinking that they need to be the biggest startup in the world. I can give you an example. There was a Brazilian startup that, I mean, like all food startups, they were trying to do analytics for farms, and they would give a tablet to every farmer to make it more efficient when they do their farming. Now, all of his investors were in Brazil, and all of his clients were in Brazil. But I saw him in the Valley every 2 weeks. And I asked him why. And he said, I don't want to be a Brazilian startup shooting for Brazil. I want to be a global startup. And I want my thinking to be globally. And that is what's important here. We need the startups here to be thinking globally. We need them to have the vision of $100 billion, not $100 million. And we also need them to think that they need to sell all their shares in this generation, not to have it passed down generation and generation. And that makes them more investable.
So you're saying that they need to kind of get out of the mindset of owning all of the shares and give equity away to investors so that they can grow the company.
Yes, I don't think that this is a big problem in the region. It is a much bigger problem in Europe.
Right.
Having a startup that helps feed your grandkids is more important than having a startup that has a massive success. But there is this negative connotation in taking money. If you take money, then you needed money. But when you take money, you're getting money for the expertise of your investor. So every investor should come with greener money or with expertise. It's a cheap board member. You're giving up a board seat, you're giving up a little bit of equity, but you're getting a board member who's hopefully has more experience than you and can help you fill a gap. And that's the mentality that could grow a little bit in the region.
Why do you think that investors in this region should do you think that people should get involved at a pre-seed, early stage? What kinds of investors are the best kinds of investors for this region right now?
It's a hard question.
People with a long view. I mean, I think that the equity markets are obviously closed right now for a while. It doesn't look like there's only going to be a handful of IPOs over the rest of the year and beginning of next year. It feels like we've got to play a long game for a couple of years now, no?
Yeah, so I would say that the best investors are the ones that write $100 million checks. And in this region, the $100 million checks are incredibly intelligent and as sophisticated as every other market. The investors that are missing are the family offices that invest in early stage and pre-seed, the fools, as we like to call them in the business.
Friends, family, and fools.
Yes, but we don't always have enough friends and family, so the local family offices have not been as involved as they could be, but they are investing in funds around the world, and that's the first step to learn to invest later on.
I see. Now that you've got this footprint of plug-and-play centers in Middle East, in Turkey, in the region generally speaking, Saudi Arabia in particular, obviously, there's obviously people talking about it a lot. Is your idea to sort of connect them up and to kind of create a kind of a virtuous circle between these centers yourselves? And what sort of thinking of how are you sort of, accelerating the startups that come through your ecosystem? So
it's a hairy question because, there's a correct way to answer and the way I would like to answer. So first,
let's hear both.
Yes. Globally, we want to create connections. we want to make sure the startup is globally connected and not connected in the region. So, for example, Finland might want to connect to Japan more than Finland wants to connect to the US. Now, we don't believe in one connection one way. We believe in a connection back and forth. And one example is our mobility platform. We run a mobility program in Beijing, in Tokyo, in Modena, Italy, in Stuttgart with Daimler and Porsche, with Jaguar Land Rover, in the UK with Volvo, in Sweden, with someone in Detroit and in California. And the startup that's based on mobility, if it's based here, can visit every one of these locations and help sell to 10 OEMs in a period of a year. It doesn't happen overnight, but if there is interest on both sides, then why not go one step at a time around the world? The same thing can happen in retail. Another thing that we're doing now is we're bringing startups from outside into the region. And we're doing that because we believe in the value proposition the region has, and a lot of places don't have the same value proposition. And we want our startups to succeed as the #1 priority.
Well, that's a good note on which to end our conversation. I'll be back at about 5:10, I think, with a conversation with Signalfire. But for now, please, ladies and gentlemen, thank Seena Amidi, who's managing partner with Plug and Play. Thanks very much.
Thank you
Have
so
a great
much.
show, everybody.